Well, hey, Vision. Let me tell you, this is one of those Sundays where I'm so glad we have two services because I get to experience, and honestly, the best is still to come. I mean, it's been a good service so far. There's still so much God's going to do in the next 30 minutes or so. I'd put this, like I said, I circled it on my calendar thinking, man, the retreat and this Sunday. And then I'm sitting there, and it always makes a pastor nervous when something happens on stage I didn't see on the cue sheet. So at first service, they can walk it up. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. Somebody got a basket. I'm like, oh, it's for me and Meg. And then they're like, a video. Like, oh, no, that really makes the pastor nervous. But I really do appreciate that. It is such an honor to be part of this team here at Vision. And from men's retreat to kids events to all kind of stuff we do, it's really great. And if you follow Facebook at all, we do Facebook Live on our first service each day. So we had it shooting from right over here. And I want to let you know that with Facebook Live, we have, actually the last couple weeks, it's been hundreds, 400, 500 people during the week watching it. And in fact, we have a guy who calls Vision home. His name's Evan. He's in the military, and he was deployed a couple weeks ago to Kosovo, and now he's staying in Germany for training. He's watching us on Facebook Live in Germany. It's so cool. And then with today's speaker, our testimony, I know he's got family in California or maybe Hawaii or different places in the country that are watching Vision Church. I mean, so we are going worldwide, really, with the message that God is pushing out through our church. Now, let me talk about this series. And it's definitely been an exciting one. I love, of course, the concept of visionaries. I mean, that's who we are. You live in North Carolina, you're North Carolinian. You come to Vision, you're a visionary. And this is week 8 of 9. And if you can see, I know we got the keyboard here, but this little guy in the corner of Jailbreak, that's where we're going today with week 8. And for week 9, next week, I need your help. I'm going to be shooting out on social media and through email a chance for you to reply and give me some comments this week that I can use next week. Because I'm going to be talking in our final week of Visionaries about how God, He's so awesome. He is the one who's awesome. And I want to hear from you anytime that you've ever seen Him as awesome, experienced Him as awesome. And I want you to post or reply to me and tell me that, how you have seen God as awesome. And you will be my testimonies next week in the message. Now, we talk about this guy, Peter, who he experienced God in an awesome way. And in fact, today's prop coming out of this box is chains. And Peter, we'll see in the story today, was a guy in prison. He was chained up. And he needed a chain breaker. And he couldn't do it. None of his brothers could do it. None of the people in his circles could be a chain breaker in the way that Jesus is a chain breaker. The story you're going to hear today is about a guy who has experienced God as a chain breaker. You say, well, Matt, what are chains about? So well, maybe in your past, maybe somebody did something to you, you're bitter about it. Maybe honestly you did something and you're still feeling guilty about it. Maybe you look back in your past and it's like, oh man, I can't get past my past, and it's like a chain that's around you that Jesus says, you don't need that anymore. Or maybe it's your present, and okay, maybe you got issues, where you're scared. Fear dominates you. Jesus said, that doesn't need to be a chain in your life. Or maybe, honestly, it's your temper. Your spouse is like, listen to this one today, honey. This one's for you. And like, honestly, your temper, and it's like it's a chain that's got you. Or maybe, honestly, you're addicted to something. Tell you, when you get in a small group on a men's retreat and guys put down some layers and they get authentic and talk about lust or talk about pornography, and you're like, I got some things I'm struggling with. There's layers we can let down. And God says, look, the chains you're dealing with, you don't have to. You don't have to let those things slow you down or hold you back because Jesus can overcome that. He can do it. So let me tell you about Peter. And actually, before I do that, pull out your takeaway card. If you got that, hard copy or on your phone. And actually, if anybody's missing them, maybe Scott, can you hop up and head to the table and get the takeaways and raise your hand if you need one because I need you praying with me this week. And that's really going to be our key part of our takeaway card. And if you need one, raise your hand if you don't have one yet, and he'll get you one. Because in your takeaway card, you open it up, you'll see a little note from me. Don't you love hearing those kids back there? Those kids love coming to church here at Vision. Wow. But in your takeaway card, you see a little note from me. And there's 2 things in particular I want you to pray about. This is our 3rd of 4 weeks where we're focusing on some things to pray about. The first one deals with the elections. Now, what you're not going to hear from me is an endorsement of a candidate or endorsement of a party. What you're going to hear from me is that we, as followers of Jesus, need to understand God's values, and he wants his values to be our values. And he wants us to vote to support those values. And in fact, one of my friends is a Gaston County commissioner, godly man, and he gave us some voting packets. They're actually on the table in the hallway near the yard signs that will help you understand, at least in North Carolina, where some of the main candidates line up in terms of what they believe. Now, let me tell you this. Honestly, I'm not big on politics. If you know me, I'm not big on politics. But this one coming up in 9 days that we're going to be praying about is the biggest one that's ever happened in my lifetime. The issues at stake, and honestly, I'm not even talking about did somebody do an email illegally or not. I'm talking about the value system in our country is going to shift depending on whether people with godly values get out and vote. And I'm imploring you this week to be praying and either go vote early or in 9 days you go out there and vote. And do not give it the excuse of, well, we can or it won't. You go out and do your part, and then we'll pray that God will do his part. All right, so please join me in praying for that. And the second thing to pray for is leaders in our host teams. And you know, our host teams, I love it. I say all the time that our sermon, it starts in the parking lot. That when people come on this property, they experience God through the love of our host teams. And I love the fact that when people come to our church, they might not like our style of music. They might not believe what we believe. They might not like me and how I look or how I talk. But I think they'll walk out saying, I felt cared for in that church. So our host teams, I'm asking you to pray for those leaders because you know when you step up as a leader, you come under attack. So we're asking for Mike McCatherine, who heads up all of host teams, and he also does a pretty good job on the drums. Pretty good job there. That Mike, he heads them up, and his wife, Wendy, who heads up our first-time guest team. Pray for them. Pray for Chuck Hill. He heads up our parking team, and also pray for his wife. Then you come inside the building. You got our connection team, Penny Turpin, and pray for her husband, Paul. And then inside here, Micah Peeler heading up our greeters and our ushers. Those are our leaders, and pray for the team members, that God would just bless that team, and indeed our host teams would shine every week. So join me in praying for those things. Now let's talk about Peter. Let me give you kind of a framing on this story. This guy, Peter, his story is in the New Testament. You can read through some of the Gospels and read about him in his early days and his ups and downs, but we're picking it up today in the book of Acts, which literally is a story, a true story of the early church. Now in Acts chapter 9, Peter, a guy who honestly was just like you and me, plus the power of God, in Acts chapter 9, God uses him to heal a guy who was paralyzed. So now you imagine, okay, you go into work tomorrow, you're like, hey, great music and vision. Oh man, a testimony. No, if a paralyzed guy was sitting here in the first row and we brought him up and healed him to where he walked out, left his wheelchair behind and walked out, that would be a story that goes viral. Okay, so Peter, God works through him to heal a guy who was paralyzed, Acts chapter 9. Acts chapter 10, Peter gets this vision. And he was a Jew, and God spoke to him in a vision with a simple message that said, this message, it's not just for you. It's not just for your people. It's for all people. And this was radical because honestly, the Jews thought it was just for them. But God spoke to Peter, and literally he said, there's a guy who lives in Mount Holly and has a family, and he needs this message. He says, Peter, make sure that it spreads. And aren't you glad it did? I'm glad it did. So that's Acts chapter 10. Acts chapter 11, he stands up in front of the believers, the early church, and tells them about that vision. He says, guys, we have got to get this message and spread it. It's bigger. It's way bigger than us. So really, Peter, he's kind of on this high. I mean, God's using him. He's speaking through him, doing powerful things. And then, honestly, something terrible happens in Acts chapter 12 because they're undergoing persecution. And it really makes me think, as I study on this week, I say, God, is this going to happen in our lifetime? That we feel the screws of persecution tight down on us like it did in Acts chapter 12, where Peter, James, and John, these are guys who ran together with Jesus. They were his tightest three. And James is taken into prison, and his head is chopped off. And now you're like, okay, so what if, I'm pretty tight with Mike, but what if we come in one Sunday, we say, man, Mike got taken away this past week, and they killed him. And then to make it worse, Peter, he gets arrested, and he's sitting there in prison, and they're saying, hey, tomorrow you're going before the same king who just killed him. I mean, you talk about serious. You want to talk about changing your prayer life? I'm hoping, that that Sunday night, if they took me in captivity on Sunday night, that your prayer life just went through the roof because you're on your knees praying, saying, God, please get Pastor Matt out of there. I certainly know at our house, they'd be praying, they'd be begging, and that's the situation. We pick up this story with Peter. He's experienced the highs, and in this moment, there is fear, there is worry, because he's human. He's human like us. But let's pick this story up in Acts chapter 12. In verse 4, it says, after arresting Peter, King Herod, put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. I mean, you're talking a serious criminal. If they're putting 16 guards on him, they are making sure he is not getting out. There's no way. And Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. So Peter, he was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying for him. And that indeed is what I want for Vision Church. I want us to be known as a church that prays with earnest, with passion, with belief that something will happen. It says, the night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. Quick, get up, he said, and the chains fell off his wrists. Now, this is literal, but I want to make sure that throughout this message, you're thinking figuratively that I'll say God wants to take your chains off. He does. I mean, he literally wants to take anything that is chaining you back from living this abundant life he talks about. He wants to do that in your life. And it really happened in Peter's world. We pick up verse 8. Then the angel said to him, put on your clothes and sandals. And Peter did so. Wrap your cloak around you and follow me, the angel told him. Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. And when you read God's word, I always want you not to just don't take it at face value, but really critically think about what's happening. This tells us that Peter, the angel came in. I mean, first there's shock. Anytime we see an angel, there is shock. One of the first things they always say is, don't be afraid. So I'm sure Peter's like, okay, get over that shock. An angel's here. Next, the chains come off. And literally, I think Peter is in a state of shock where he's like, I don't know what to do next because, I mean, why would an angel say, hey, man, put your clothes on? He said, oh, okay. And like, follow me. Come on, let's go. Peter's like, okay. And they go walking out. Literally, an angel is leading him out of the prison, but he can't even think. I think sometimes with us, we got those chains on and they start coming off. And like, now what do I do? God's just like, follow me. Come on, I'll show you the way. Follow me. So it continues. It says, Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea that what the angel was doing was really happening. He thought he was seeing a vision. So they passed the first and second guards, came to the iron gate leading to the city, and it opened for them by itself. They went through it. When he'd walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. Now, I'm gonna kind of paraphrase some next parts of the story so you can kind of understand this. Now, Peter, he goes walking down the street, I think just again, like in shock of what has happened. Because remember, fear level was here. Guards, 16 guards, there's no way to get out. He's out. The chains are off. He's walking down. He's like, okay, I'm going to the visionaries, man. I got to go tell them I got out. So let's picture this. Say it's me who got out. I go walk into the house where the visionaries are praying. I go knock on the door, and Kylie Geisler comes to the door. She does a little, takes a look. Now remember, I'm not just like, man, this is great. I'm like, are they chasing me? Are they coming after me? Are they going to come get me? I'm like, Kylie opens the door. She's like, hey, it's Pastor Matt. And she goes run the back. I'm like, Kylie, open the door. Open the door. They might be coming after me. And she goes in the back and she's like, guys, everybody's praying. And I mean, Meg, they're crying. They're like, Pastor Matt's at the front door. They're literally like, Peter is at the front door. They're like, girl, I know it's late. I don't know what they put in your drink or something. I mean, Peter's not at the front door. He's in prison. We're praying for him. And she's like, I thought that's what we were praying for, that he would get out of prison. And they're like, okay, let's go take a look. And they go to the front door and they open it and Peter is there. Now, this is so cool about the Bible, how I say it doesn't hide the mess ups. That literally, would you want a story in there, Sean, about the time you prayed and God answered it? And you're like, nah, he didn't really answer it. And I'm like, he answered it? That they put that in there to show that these heroes of the faith that were praying, they didn't even believe that God was going to answer. They thought, they hoped, But finally, they went and looked in that door, and he was there, and their faith just went to another level. And they bring Peter in. Let's continue. It says in verse 16, Peter, he kept on knocking. He's like, Kylie, text her or something. Come back out here. I'm out here. Okay. Bill, tell your daughter, come on the door. And when they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. And Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet. He described how the Lord had brought him out of prison. Tell James, and this is a different James. This is James, the half-brother of Jesus, who was the leader of the church at that time. He said, tell James and the other brothers and sisters about this. He said, and honestly, Peter left. He's like, man, I'm not hanging around. Man, I'm trusting in God, but also God gave me the chance to get out of town. I'm getting out of town. So he takes off. He gets out of town. And in the morning, there was no small commotion among the soldiers as to what had become of Peter. After Herod had a thorough search made for him and didn't find him, he cross-examined the guards and ordered that they be executed. I mean, this was major, what had happened. It was humiliating to Herod and to the people who didn't believe in Jesus. They didn't want anybody to know this. They said, oh man, don't let those guards tell their story. We'll just kind of contain this. That this guy, that the chains broke and he got out of prison. Don't let anybody know. Well, here's what we learned from Peter. Okay, 4 things. We learned, first of all, that the power of Jesus can break chains. Okay, that literally those chains that were around Peter that he couldn't break out of, and that his buddies couldn't get in there and break him out of, and that he couldn't just magically slide out of, that Jesus, the Son of God, was the one who could break those chains even when it seemed impossible. So I want you to get this. You're sitting there thinking, man, my temper, I hate my temper. I hate my temper. And you're like, it's a chain. I can't possibly break. And Jesus is like, that's why I'm here. I'm here to help you with that. And you're like, that thing that somebody did to me years ago, I can't let it go. I can't let it go. Jesus says, I want to help you let it go. There's so many better things in store for you. Let's break them. Jesus can break chains even when they seem impossible. Number 2, that prayer is an important part of this thing. Those people were praying. They were believing that somehow prayer, it catches God's attention, it shifts his heart, it moves him. We don't understand it totally, but the bottom line is that prayer makes a difference. And God heard those prayers, and he sent his angel, and he'll do it for you too. So when we pray for ourselves or we pray for each other, prayer is an important piece of this thing. Number 3, when Jesus breaks the chain, we need to get up and we need to get going. Peter, he's standing there with no clothes. He's like, put them on. Peter's there, standing up there not moving. The angel's like, come on, get moving. And I think a lot of times in our world, even when God kind of takes that chain off and we're almost like still paralyzed, he says, come on, get up, get moving. Let's go to number 4. He says, tell other people about it. This wasn't just for you. We need to tell other people when Jesus breaks a chain in our life so that we benefit, they benefit, it grows our faith. It has momentum to it that Jesus totally intends for us to build each other up. Just like these Iron Men, iron sharpening iron. I was in a group with some guys, and honestly, we're talking about some heavy stuff, and one of the guys starts sharing, and I'm like, wow. And all of us are thinking, thank you for sharing that because I deal with that. I deal with that. And it's beautiful when God breaks a chain and you share it, and it takes away the power of it. So you say, well, how do I do that? Well, first, you got to have a relationship with this chain breaker. Man, you got to be walking with God. And you don't say, okay, well, I can't walk with him like Pastor Bat or like Peter. Walk with him like you can. Spend time with him. Get in the Bible and trust it and believe it. Be a part of worship. Be a part of serving and interacting with Christians. You walk with God, his power gets in your life. Second thing, talk with God about it. That's the prayer element. I mean, he already knows what's going on in you, but when you stop and talk with him about it and humble yourself and ask for help, he will work in that communication, in that relationship. Third thing is, again, when Jesus does his part, you got to do your part. Because when we got these chains, these big ones, these small ones, and God does something, and he takes it off of you, and you're like, oh, great, man, the chain's off. Move. Do something. Make the most of the opportunity God has given you. Don't just sit on that, and gosh, don't just keep it for yourself. Do your part. And last, give God the glory. And tell other people. That's how you make this happen. It's not just a system. You can't plug these in and make it work, but it is a pattern that we see in God's word. It's a pattern we see in Peter. It's a pattern we see in the guy who's going to share today. So I want to read you something before our guest comes up today. It's so cool how God is bringing people to our church from California, from Jersey, from Indiana, from Georgia, from Ranlo. He's bringing Ranlo. And a couple he's brought from California, the husband, his name's Nehemiah. I'll introduce him in a minute. His story kind of starts in this article I'm going to read from the CEO of Goodwill in Orange County, California. Now, Goodwill, nationwide, they're huge. And they got all the different pieces of it. So in Orange County, which ministers, tens of thousands, 20,000 people, the CEO of it, he wrote in this article called the Huffington Post, and his name is Frank Tallarico Jr. Here's what he wrote. He said, when I arrived at Goodwill of Orange County 4 years ago, we were an $83 million enterprise. Today, we're more than a $121 million operation and growing rapidly. We serve 20,000 people. We've exceeded our goals in nearly every metric measurable. It's not because I'm so great. It's because everyone around me is so great, and they're made to know it. If you want to lead effectively in today's collaborative and competitive environment, you have to trust your team. They're going to fail at times, but when they succeed, they're going to be spectacular. Wouldn't you like to work for somebody like that? What a great perspective. So he continues, says, Nehemiah Papali'i was born with a rare condition that fused his ligaments together. Doctors told his parents he'd never walk, he'd never talk, never use his arms. He proved every one of those predictions wrong, and we were lucky enough to hire him for an entry-level position when he was 28 years old at shopgoodwill.com, an innovative online marketplace that we created and own, which earns more than $72 million for Goodwills all over the country and the world. He continues, says, Nehemiah, took pictures of the donated merchandise that hadn't sold yet. Then, because he has such a brilliant mind, he realized that if we presented the unsold items in a more marketable way on our website, we could increase sales. He was right. So basically what they're doing, they're taking stuff that you donate to Goodwill, they look at it and say, man, that is too good to sell at Goodwill. We need to put it online, put it on eBay, put it on Amazon, and they're selling stuff for much greater value. It says, a multi-million-dollar initiative from a guy who was told as a child that he'd never do anything. Now, recently, Nehemiah left us to take a position as the e-commerce manager at Goodwill Industries of the Southern Piedmont in North Carolina. Now living with his wife on the East Coast, he is professionally 1,000,000 miles away from that entry-level position. Now, guys, honestly, I can't wait for you to get to meet him and get to know him more and more. So would you welcome up here Nehemiah Papali'i. All right, Nehemiah, thank you for joining us again. The first service was incredible. So come on up and grab a seat. And as he comes on up, we're going to show you some pictures of Nehemiah. That whole Courtney first service. Don't get too nervous. He sent me like 27 pictures, but we'll post some of those. But I would put up some of them. So start off here with his beautiful wife, Courtney. And how long y'all been married?
A little over 3 years.
3 years, all right. And then a little more informal one here. You guys take a little selfie action going on. And then tell us, who are these kids, the next one?
So these are my nieces, Aaliyah and Elena. Today is actually Elena's birthday. So happy birthday.
They're cute. And then last one, you see him wearing that shirt, let your faith in God be bigger than your fears. And this guy's living it. So let's spend some time and get to know Nehemiah. Samoan, Polynesian descent, which typically Samoans are very large people, very big. So Nehemiah, when his mom was pregnant, actually had an accident where something happened internally. There was damage. There was with the cord, all these different things happened to where as she was getting near giving birth, the doctors were saying, you're not going to want this baby. He's not going to make it. Don't get your hopes up. In fact, it's not going to have a chance. But she went ahead and gave birth to Nehemiah. And why don't you give us some background about challenges as a kid, as a teen? I mean, coming into life with physical limitations. What's this been like for you?
Okay, so as a child, Everyone, take a look at your hands. Look at your hands. As a child, you do everything with your hands. Usually, when you meet people, that's the first thing that they notice. Well, my hands didn't turn out like everyone else's, and as a child, that was rough. Okay, from grade school, kindergarten, whatever. It was rough. So I actually went under the knife. I had an operation. My last major, I had 28 operations. So most of my childhood was spent under the knife in the hospital rather than at home. So my last major operation was on my hands because at that time I was wanting to play the drums, and my first drum instructor had a meeting with my father. He didn't know the door was open, but I heard him tell my father that because of how my hands were, he wasn't going to be able to teach me any further. Pretty much taking away the one thing that kept me sane at that time. So I kind of told myself, I'm not going to let, from that moment on, whatever disability I may have, I'm not going to let anybody, dictate how I'm going to live my life further. So how I learned the drums was put in a Aerosmith CD tape back in the days, tape, and just rocked out with it, and that's how I learned my talent. Um, uh, uh, I apologize.
Just relax. You tell us
And
all the challenges
then
you went through.
so I was always ostracized by even people that were prejudged themselves. So even people that had disabilities, I was even an outcast from them. So I was the last one to be picked. Duck, duck, goose, or heads up, 7 up. I was the last person to be anything, and I was already battling, my own personal battles, but to try to be included in school and everything else, I was never included. So I became a hermit. I did a lot of learning. I love to learn. Did a lot of reading. I'm kind of a nerd, and I think that's a positive, from all that. So I mean, that's a positive to being, doing everything on my own. As I got older, I started to flourish a little bit more in high school, but again, I was still hesitant to show everybody, you know, my weakness. So when I went to school or everyone else, I was putting on a face, a veil, like, oh yeah, I'm happy, I'm cool and everything. But what everybody did not understand was I was always hurting from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, if I even go to bed. Pastor Matt asked me a question the other day, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hurt? It's a 12 every day, 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day. I do not get a break.
We talked about that pain when I came to your house that first time to have dinner, you and Courtney, and tears are coming down. And I was like, what are your tears about? He said, man, I'm not emotional, and I'm not nervous. He said, I hurt so much that my body reacts by tears. So continue.
Now the pain comes from, so one of the things I have a lot of different things. So there's a condition called scoliosis, so everyone knows, because in school we would get tested. Okay, so that's one of the conditions I have, but mine's is a little interesting. Okay, so instead of just a curve, what scoliosis is, my body is twisted in a 4-dimensional twist. Okay, and this is so insane that when I go to the doctors or anything like that, they are mystified how I'm even walking. Or if I go for, like, okay, my arm is hurting, they will recommend me to go to a specialist because they're too afraid to, do their job. Which is understandable, but I've had to work to walk. Physical therapy was my entire first 15 years of life. One of the things I remember about physical therapy was those brick steps. I don't know if any of you played sports and you get injured on your knee. Well, to make it better again, they would make you walk these brick steps, like three steps. Um, if I wanted to walk, I would have to walk those 3 steps, breaking bones every single time. And because I wanted to be like everyone else, because I wanted to go upstairs with my sister to get my toy, because I wanted to go on the jungle gym with my 2 younger brothers, I had to endure the pain, and I did it in tears. I was a child, and that's one of the things that a lot of people really don't understand is I was going through this pain as a child, and no child should ever go through that. But I did it because I kind of wanted something better for myself because my mind was already 100% there. It was everybody else was just focused on my exterior and not giving me that opportunity.
Well, Nehemiah, we talked some about the worst day of your life at the restaurant and then back at your house. Can you tell us what happened that day?
Sunday was usually a family fun day. We go to church, and then after that, we would go, have lunch or have dinner. And this one day, we went out to a restaurant. I wasn't feeling well already, but I decided to go because I was hungry, and I'm Samoan and I love to eat, no matter how small I look. So we went, and it was really crowded. Now, I was a little bit younger this time, so I'm very hesitant to go anywhere with a large crowd because I'm always stared at. I'm always the center of attention in a negative way. Um, but again, I went with the family. I walk in, and as soon as I stepped in, I could already see, people staring and whatever. It was a buffet, so we go in. I get my food, and then I sit down. Okay, everyone's already on their second plate, third plate, sixth plate. My dad, and but I was just done at half of my first plate, and everyone's like, "Are you okay?" And I didn't say nothing. Everyone literally in that restaurant was in some way or form, staring at me, pointing me out, and I had one of those out of experience moments where I literally wanted to jump on the table, pull out a gun, and just shoot myself because I wanted everyone else to feel how they were making me feel at that time. Every single day of my life to that point was always, you know, my drums was my safety. I'm sitting behind a drum set. Even when I'm speaking, I'm behind a wall because, I don't want people to see who I am and how I am. That moment was the lowest. And I remember driving home. In my head, I just had a billion things going on. I go home. I went straight to my parents' bathroom because nobody usually goes there. So I knew I could be alone and away from distraction. I went into the bathroom. I locked the door, dropped all my clothes, looked in the mirror, and just hated myself. I verbally looked in the mirror and said, I don't like you. I don't like me. Why did God create me like this? Why do I have to go through all this pain? Why can't I go to sleep? Why? And there was a rusted scissors sitting on the sink, and I grabbed it and I just put it across my, abdominal area, and I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about my mom and dad, my siblings, anything, whatever success I may have, I did not care because I had pain, so much pain coming from people and then pain coming from myself, my body. So I wasn't winning no matter what I did. So I didn't care. And I was already on it, blood coming out, everything. And I wasn't going to stop. And then a knock came on the door. And a little voice, Uncle Jeremy, Uncle Jeremy.
as they called you, Jeremy or Nehemiah, right? Your family?
Yeah. FYI. Uh, Uncle Jeremy, are you okay? That was the first time in my entire life that anybody has ever asked that question in such a genuine type of way. And in that moment, remember, I was in the bathroom that nobody goes to. I was in my mom and dad's bathroom. Nobody goes in there. And this one little nephew of mine, who was actually named after me, because he was also a miracle baby, he went to that bathroom and knocked on that door while I was about to take my own life. And as soon as I heard his voice and that question inside, I said to myself, no, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And that was the first time I accepted that I was not okay. I dropped the blade and I just cried and I said, sorry. I'm so sorry that I let myself down like that. I'm sorry I let my guard down. I was always strong, but at that moment, I just lost it. And I told God at that time, okay, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you. All this pain, all this, suffering is for a reason, because you brought my nephew to knock on this door to save me. So from that moment on, I never went back to that dark time, and I was always on a positive note, no matter what happened. And I'm here, So
Well, before my last question for you, I want you guys to understand, his position in California, 22 Goodwill stores funneled into his place. I mean, a massive amount of responsibility. When he started in that position, their e-commerce was bringing in about $1.5 million a year. In his last full year there, 2015, they brought in $6 million. So this guy is brilliant at what he does. And in fact, this year when he left, they had projected $7 million. So imagine whatever time they did to steal him away, they were not happy about it. They wanted this guy to stay on their staff. This is so cool too that e-commerce in that location of Goodwill, it began that e-commerce had 0 people working there that were disabled. By the time he left, they had the most number of disabled people in that Goodwill working in that department. And he did that. He led that charge. And to think that, Charlotte, all the way over here, and this is so cool that the lady he works for now is a friend of mine and Meg we know from years back. And when I heard that he had interviewed with her and then got hired and came over here, didn't get the vision through her. Him and Courtney, they heard about vision through signs and all kind of stuff, found us here, and even then the connection was put together, that God put those pieces together, and that literally his value is so much that they would hire him and bring him from California to Charlotte to raise e-commerce in this market to a higher level. That's what he does. So my last question for you then, Nehemiah, is, man, what does Jesus mean to you in all this?
He has meant everything. Everything that all the chains that were broken from day one was his doing. It wasn't just me, myself, or anybody that has come across me. It was literally him. And it's very interesting because the last 4 years of my life was when, I really started walking with him, like literally walking with him. And it ended up by an invite. I was invited to a church by a mentor. And off of that invite, it just flourished, every single day, being positive, serving others. And that's one of the reasons why I am very passionate about the organization that I work for, is because we serve people. We serve our community. So it's crazy how everything is connected, and God is he's awesome. He's awesome. And I think my story may be different from yours. My circumstances may be different from yours. But I want you to take away that from day one, everything was supposed to be impossible. Impossible. From walking to talking to putting on my shoes to all of that. And one by one, God, our Creator, our Savior, helped me break every single one of them. So I encourage you to, no matter how bad your day is or how much you think you're struggling, just always remember that there's someone out there who is struggling just as much as you. Okay, thank you.
All right, let's thank God for Nehemiah being here today.